Everybody, I'd like to do something a little different today, and instead of a review of the figure, I'm going to give you guys an in-depth tutorial on how exactly I make my figures. Regardless of what figure I'm making or you're making, these steps often apply to nearly everything I make, so you should be able to follow along regardless of what your project is. I'm not sure how many parts this series will be, since I'm actually making these videos as I go through the process itself. To start things off, I wanted to cover how exactly I choose what I'm going to make next. I usually go through periods of time where I just don't know what I want to make. My inspiration usually relies on what I'm into at the time or what's popular. For instance, when there was hope on the horizon for Disney to buy Fox's Heroes, I was excited and was inspired to do my MCU-style Fantastic Four, which I will review soon. And recently, when Marvel did buy Fox's Heroes, I was again inspired to make my MCU Wolverine and movie Deadpool and Colossus. I even went so far as making a full lineup of MCU X-Men, which I'm still tweaking, by the way. Recently, I haven't been inspired by much, so during times like these I look to figures on discount or things in my fodder bin that might incite an idea. During Black Friday I was looking through all these amazing deals and came across a 12-inch Captain America from the Marvel Legends line for around $25. I never really liked this line and had always passed it up, but the body and sheer size showed so much potential, so I pulled the trigger and began brainstorming until it arrived. Galactus has always been one of my favorite villains in Marvel Comics. From his sheer size to the imposing doom he brings to every planet he visits, I've always loved him. I've only begun collecting in the last 3 years or so, so I've always been upset about the lack of his presence in my collection. And even with the new Silver Surfer sitting on my shelf, he just feels like he's missing something. The Marvel Universe and old Toy Biz Build-A-Figure have always been dreams of mine to own, but their price points constantly turn me away. I've always hoped Hasbro would do him justice in their own Build-A-Figure, or maybe bring back his Marvel Universe scale, but the Fantastic Four wave being completely absent of his presence, my hope is slim. After the 12-inch Captain America arrived in the mail, I realized that this was the perfect project for him. The size towered over other Marvel Legends, and the bits of clothing and armor looked like it could be the perfect starting point. So, with newfound inspiration, I got to work. The first thing I did with them was remove key bits that I knew I wouldn't need. The belt and the giant shoulder pads he came with were just unnecessary for Galactus, and luckily they were easy to remove with the help of an X-Acto knife. Next up was to begin the basic prep needed for painting and sculpting. Cap got a nice steamy bath in the world's finest hot tub known as My Kitchen Stove. This allows the soft plastic to heat up nicely so that it could easily pop off the arms and legs and remove the pegs in their joints. Be careful in this step as the water is very hot and will burn you. I mean, it's boiling. So be sure to dry off the parts well with a towel before you begin disassembling. I'm not responsible for your injuries, okay? I then popped off the chest piece and its odd spring mechanism since it was a separate piece and I needed a firm base to sculpt on. I also fully sanded down the back scales since I'd be resculpting that part anyways and didn't need the extra bulk. I then went and sanded down all the limb pieces where they might rub together as well as the joint pieces themselves with a Dremel to prevent any possible paint rub later on. This is a tedious step, but it goes a long way in making sure your paint looks the best it can. With all the parts sanded down and ready to go, I threw them all back into the luxury hot tub to soften them up for reconstruction. And there we have Cap back together, all ready to go. That about does it as far as prep goes. This process took me only about an hour to an hour and a half, and it's very simple. It can get boring sitting there dremeling joints for half an hour, but like I said, it goes a long way. With all this said and done, we can move on to the real fun stuff like sculpting and painting, where we really get a chance to transform this figure. Be on the lookout for the next video in this series where I'll more than likely be showing you guys how to do Galactus' belt/skirt piece and possibly his helmet using plasticard, or as some call it, polystyrene. This is my first time working with this material and I'm really excited but also really nervous. It's going to be an interesting process, so be sure to tune in.